Years ago, when I first started experiencing the manga of Tatsuki Fujimoto, I, like so many others, fell down the creatively induced fever dream that was his manga. Through his other work apart from Chainsaw Man, I began to see what Fujimoto could do with the pen and paper. Besides creating panels I never thought I could see, it was by creating stories I never thought could make me feel so many things. After reading the one-shot Goodbye Eri and making a video on his first series Fire Punch, all roads pointed towards his next one-shot story, Look Back. And after reading it for the first time, I was unsure of how to feel. It was great and honest, but I preferred Goodbye Eri much more as a one-shot. And I think it's because there was something I was missing. As I made more videos and learned more about the world of manga, I started to yearn for stories that could show me insight into the industry itself and what it's like to create. Manga like Bakuman are stories that fuel me to make something, and they help me admire how much time and effort it takes to do so. That's when I remembered Look Back. I hadn't read it in a while, but this time something really struck me that I somehow missed the first time. When it was announced the manga was going to receive an anime adaptation film, I was excited but also really unsure of what a feature film could bring to a manga one-shot that, in my eyes, had so easily said what it needed to say with just 144 pages. What can a film bring that wasn't already there? It's only recently I finally sat down and watched Look Back. And I'm not going to tell you something that you don't already know. It's good. It's amazing, actually. It is something you should watch, something I would recommend, and something I think many other people in many other videos on this website have already said. For me, however, I want to show you how something like 144 pages of pure manga love was shown in a medium that sometimes fails to capture the essence of what it is adapting. Because Look Back is not like most adaptations. It's not like most movies based on manga, and unlike most manga, it is drawn from the mind of someone who creates film on paper. How does a film adapt a story totally about creating art and why you do it, and even asking that question to us the viewers and even themselves? So let's talk about what happens when art tries to adapt art. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, I need to talk about the word adaptation. And if this word sounds familiar, good, because if you're an anime fan, it should. Adaptation is something that in the manga and anime world is ever so rarely talked about. It's funny to say that because so many of anime's best work was adapted from a piece of already existing material. This isn't a bad thing, but it becomes a point of contention, especially in manga and anime, when people begin to try and criticize how an adaptation should or should not present itself. Manga readers can be very specific and pedantic when certain scenes in the manga are not frame by frame captured on the screen and alterations have to be made, then lashing out saying that the show is now bad because it doesn't follow directly what the thing I love is doing originally. And over the years, some of the greatest anime were doing that. They were copying every frame and panel from the manga one for one. And part of the reason is because classic anime, being of low budget and even time, was still able to capture the panels of some of the story's most iconic moments because they were still frames. There was nothing to animate at a high degree because the still image said all that needed to be said. But as anime became much more versatile on how they adapt work with new studios, new talent, and well-known manga, they no longer needed to be constrained to just moving an image from left to right with repeatable keyframe actions of people talking. Studios and their artists have had the ability to expand more than anything the page can imply. Let me show you an example. Take a look at this action sequence from the third season of Attack on Titan. You can see that the animators took immense creative thinking and time to adapt the situation the character Levi finds himself in. It's an insane sequence, 3D environments and 2D characters moving at such high speed. If you think about it, what was the manga's version of this that they adapted? This is nearly a minute-long action sequence. How many pages must it have taken to draw all of that? And it turns out it took 4. Because this insane death chase through the streets is not what the manga as a medium wants to do, nor does the author Isayama have the mangaka luxury to draw such an insanely detailed sequence. But animators, especially anime running on a seasonal yearly basis, can take a small 4-page sequence of characters being chased and turn it into a high-octane air chase spectacle. Animators have runtime, and that time must be filled. A couple of panels of action would be more economical to animate as they were drawn on the page, but it doesn't look as nice. It can disrupt the flow and pace of these scenes and feel unrealistic in the medium itself. Unlike manga, where the pace of the scene is dictated by the reader, as opposed to a film or show, it is dictated by time itself. The reason I'm showing this example before we talk about Look Back is because of 2 principles I personally believe succeed when creating an adaptation. The source material is a blueprint and should not dictate frame by frame, shot for shot, how a film should interpret it. The adaptation must add or discard elements of the source material for the sake of the medium strengths and the story they are telling. I will give you some examples, and not just from anime, but also films that adapt from other mediums. So what do I mean that the source material is a blueprint? Blueprints are guidelines. They're not hard set rules of how something should play out, because things can come up that change everything. Inside every written material is a story that is the essence of what it is trying to say, and what you choose to take from it or add to it creates a new context of how it is said. It can still resonate the original feeling, the original idea, or it can create something brand new. The Attack on Titan Levi chase is an example of taking a few panels and saying, it's a bit boring if we only just show Levi going from here to here to here. What would actually happen if Levi was really surrounded by multiple enemies all at once? He would need to move as fast as he can, and each shot he dodged would need to be a close call. So how do we, as the animators, show that with a character that is by far the strongest and fastest soldier in this world that we have built? The sequence before is that answer. So let's see how Look Back does that. When you adapt a medium like manga, you are not just giving these panels color and sound, you are also granting motion, which ironically is something a lot of anime lack because many adapt JPEG to JPEG, and of course the reality of that is harsh work standards that animators have with time constraints and budgets, which makes sense. So when I see a film or anime that grants some kind of character motion that doesn't feel so stiff, I'm really intrigued, and I know for a fact that was difficult. A key difference here is that we are adapting Fujimoto's work, and Tatsuki Fujimoto is a cinephile and continuously references classic films he loves, not just literally in a narrative way, but in a technical way. His work itself attempts to use the techniques of filmmaking in the format of manga. That sounds really weird, but to show you what I mean, I want you to look at a page from Fujimoto's Fire Punch. Here, the main character Agni is walking after having a fateful encounter that is impactful to his story. He seems to have grown and has a conversation with another character. After the conversation ends, Agni walks. On the next panel on the same page, he walks. The next panel on the same page, he walks. And it goes on and on as he recalls moments from his past for 4 pages. The question is, why would he do this? Manga as a medium is similar visually to storyboards used in film. Storyboards are for the filmmakers to visualize the beats and shots of the film, supplementing how long the shot will go for up to their own interpretation when they film it or they edit it. Manga has the ability to give the implication of time based on a number of factors. How small the panel is, how wide it is, the context of the scene, how the motion of the characters is drawn in context of the scene. For example, this fight scene between Miyamoto and an adversary. The way in which the panels are organized can show how quickly these snippets of time are happening. But if we look at a large double page spread of him looking at another character, it can be applied this moment as lasting seconds, maybe even minutes. In a film, if we took these panels and just put them all together, Agni's walk scene would be a one shot of a character walking with no cuts to demand the viewer's attention and change the tone of the story. And that's exactly what Fujimoto is doing. Using the panels and the spaces between them, he is letting you know as the reader that these are snippets of time that are continuously happening as you read it. This is the beauty of panel work in all his manga. The sense at this moment is actually lasting longer than we would expect and not changing the angle of the panels or the camera for specific story reasons. And so when you have a mangaka making literal pieces of film in manga format get his work adapted to film, how would you as the filmmaker adapt it? During the film, the main characters Fujino and Kyomoto are constantly drawing, and the most iconic panels in this manga are of Fujino's back to the viewer as she works. In the manga, it's the front cover, and in the film, it's the second shot. So instead of just having the camera be behind Fujino, identical to the panel, director Kiyotaka Oshiyama does this. For 1 minute and 22 seconds, we stay on this shot as we slowly push in. Fujino, tired and unsure of what to draw next. Our only way of knowing that is hearing her groan, her body language when she's trying to think, and her face, which can be seen from a small mirror on her desk. Only as she begins to draw again, with an aha moment, we cue the title card, build the music, and cut away as soon as she looks back at the camera. This is what I mean when you emphasize the material. You give it life, not by just adding subtle character movements, but subtle camera pushes, subtle music escalation, sound effects. It all works for this one shot, and it sets the tone of the film. Oshiyama wants to show us someone drawing manga, unfiltered in a room alone with subtle realistic movement. Every major part of the story of the manga is emphasized with realistic and unrealistic passion. Look at this scene here when Fujino first sees the manga in the school newsletter drawn by Kyomoto. In the actual manga, it's great because when you turn the page, at a glance, you can see how talented Kyomoto is at drawing environments. The shading of the light as it comes through the window, the detail of the school desk, the architecture of the building. Compare this immediately to Fujino's own crude stick figure drawings, and on the page next to all this is her reaction. We already have seen Fujino's illustrations, and in the first scene in the film, Oshiyama takes those illustrations and actually animates them to highlight her ability at storytelling. So, how can you emphasize the work of Kyomoto when we can read it at a glance in the manga and see how talented she is as soon as we see it? Well, you do the same thing, but you emphasize. Transport the viewer to a world of art. The panels have color and a quiet hum of calm music fills the air. The light is golden and warm. And then you harsh cut to this shit. Fujino, what is this? You only show what you need to the viewer because this isn't a manga, it's a film. There are so many examples of emphasizing look back and not trying to just use each panel as a shot-by-shot checklist. Instead, the filmmakers are asking themselves the right questions. What is Fujimoto showing us and how can we add to it? Which brings me to the second principle, and to many source material purists, it is the most contentious when it comes to adaptations: adding and subtracting. In the anime Death Note, 90% of the entire series follows the manga and rarely strays away. This ends up making sense because if you take one individual chapter out of the series, all the events and choices made by characters and how they react to a situation just fall apart. So you need basically everything there. The major differences, if you've experienced both the manga and the anime, are the endings, but I don't want to spoil them, and instead I want to talk about an addition that feels very genuine and adds something that the manga doesn't have, and it adds specifically to the character of L. In episode 25, Silence, L is struggling with the current situation of the Kira case, seemingly faced with only a single choice in how to proceed. Throughout the manga, we have seen glimpses of L's character becoming more open to those around him, and having been a shut-in genius, he's now surrounded by people he cares for, even Light, the man he suspects is Kira, yet it's the one person he relates to the most. In this episode, the anime decides to portray L in a way that is different than we have seen him. Instead of being sure, focused, and unwavering, he is unsure, distracted, and melancholic about what might happen, appearing in front of his father figure and caretaker Watari with not a word to say, like a child seeking reassurance, something L of the manga would never do. And many might see that as a criticism and not true to the source material, but it adds something that actually makes us see how much more there is to a character like him. He's still human. There's a scene on top of the building in the rain between Light and Elle, and it's this moment where we can see these two characters who are enemies have a moment to see if one will finally break. The scene after this, where Elle washes Light's feet, has major biblical significance, as it was Jesus who instructed his disciples after washing one of their feet that they do so for each other, as no one is beneath you. It shows humility, something the great Elle rarely does. And it means so much if you know what scene takes place next and what kind of person Elle is. This is all in 5 minutes and says so much about our characters and their relationship besides criminal and detective. It implies a friendship that could exist if not for who they are or what they are. Or maybe they can only be friends in this specific dynamic. Maybe they're gay. The visual shots and lingering tension is also an amazing touch. The shot of Light staring at Elle through the glass steps, altering his face. Misa's haunting cosplay murder singing montage. These are things the animators and writers are looking at their episode count and acknowledging that we have to add something that sets tone, shows character, but doesn't waste time in order to fill it. What can we add? And the answer is all these amazing elements. So what does Look Back do when it isn't just emphasizing? What does it also add as well? This is one of my favorite scenes, and it's after Fujino first meets Kyomoto. Until this point, Fujino has been endlessly trying to get better at drawing because of Kyomoto's superior skills, but gave up. After which, the shut-in expresses how much she loved Fujino's manga. The very person Fujino had been trying to compete with wants to know when and if she will make a manga again. In the source material, Fujino, now walking home in the rain, suddenly gains this spur of something that makes her walk, march, skip, and then when I first read this, I didn't know what this feeling meant, but it was something strong and it felt important to Fujino that she relishes in this. So for the film, what do the filmmakers add and emphasize? Fujino does what she does in the manga, but then the music builds. The shots match cut. The shots also give rise to this expression and feeling she's getting. The camera uses the rule of thirds, offsetting her legs as they rise and stomp to the ground, her bag swaying as she jumps again and again. The sound of her feet hitting the soaking dirt as the rain falls, so does the music sweeping in this amazing sky shot toward Fujino. Her movements are filled with this mighty pride, stomping and splashing like she can barely contain it, and then she sprints home. 4 panels were instead changed to this dynamic sequence of character development. This rush that someone she thought was her rival loves what she made. That what she drew was more impactful to the person she strove to be better than. A triumphant rain stomp sequence is suddenly so much more than 4 panels, but an entire scene of ecstatic passion for someone who feels seen by another creative person. I'll tell you, when you make something and it feels like it was seen by someone and feels like you had something impact them in some way, this is that. It's through the film adaptation and the essence it captured that when I read that scene in the manga again, I'm no longer unsure what that feeling is. It just gave me a whole new context of it. Something I think an adaptation should have the power to do. So that brings us to the last part, and I think the part most people worry about when they learn something they love is being adapted. What will they cut? In his video, The Adventures of Tintin and the Shadows of Giants, YouTuber and Scooby-Doo fanatic Breadsword mentions his disappointment with the video game adaptation film Warcraft, stating as a fan of the games he felt the film was too busy living under their shadow and spending too much time trying to appease fans, resulting in a fanboy-focused product at the expense of becoming a really good film. Cramming all these references, Easter eggs, and world building in the film fans would understand, but get in the way of the characters' own decisions and the story being told to people who aren't. culminating in his point that in order to adapt something, one must use what can work and get rid of everything that doesn't. Of all the adaptations that I've watched, which were adapted from some form of source material I had already experienced, the best ones respected the material enough to get rid of what would hinder the medium of a film or show and not waste time getting in its own way of telling the core of the story. For this one, I want to take a step back from only manga and go into the world of film, because the rules still apply. I want to talk about a little film called The Lord of the Rings. These movies are long, and their extended editions are longer, and still leave out significant things from each book. The books are Tolkien's world he created, and everything he wrote is important. So how do you choose what to cut when your film is already getting to 3.5 hours long? The essence of the story is what you need to keep intact, and director Peter Jackson did not want to change how fantastical and crazy the story can get, as well as the core being about small good is worth fighting for. So you have to cut negligible elements, like Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil is a character Frodo and the Hobbits meet in the first book. He looks like this, but despite looking like old mate who is on the way to judge the next pumpkin contest, he was here when the first drop of water hit the earth of this ancient fantasy world. This man is old and powerful. After meeting Tom, Frodo shows him the One Ring, which in this story, if you don't know, is what is keeping the Dark Lord that will end all life on this earth from becoming complete again. It's very, very, very dangerous and must be destroyed. Tom, however, pays it very little mind and doesn't seem to have the ambition-tempting spell cast on him when it has on all other living beings. Tom even puts it on and doesn't go invisible, which is one of its powers when someone wears it. Bombadil helps Tolkien show how old and magical the world outside of Frodo's home can be, and what kind of beings lay in wait out there in the rest of Middle-earth. That's important. It is, because we do see that in the films. But there was no way Tom was going to be kept in the films, as he doesn't actually change anything about the story as a whole. Unlike Death Note, if you take out Tom, nothing about the story's events change. Frodo still journeys to Mordor and has a beautiful friendship with Sam that's got similar gay vibes to Death Note. You have to understand that conversations must be cut. They must be shortened, they must be concise, and they can show character and be subtle, but it has to be chosen carefully. Then you can start to understand that not every scene you love and cherish can work in the context of a medium like film. So what does look back get rid of? And I have to be honest here, they cut almost nothing. I went through each page, scene by scene, and besides using Fujimoto's cinematic eye as a reference, they do not cut a single scene, because all of it matters. The film team, I believe, knew that this would not be a particularly long film compared to most animated ones, but they understood everything Fujimoto put in the manga was essential to the story, and there was nothing to be left out. Every single scene is needed for the next one to progress, to build character, to build this relationship between our characters. But they also understood when to stop adding too much time to scenes, and when to hold back on the things they could emphasize. They don't go over the top, emphasize and adding, especially near the end. Cut what you need to tell your story without disrupting the pace of everything, but don't add too much that clouds the essence of that story. In my eyes, this is what Look Back gets so right. It knows how much it needs, it doesn't waste time doing so, but also takes its time when deciding on what matters most to the story Fujimoto created, which is a story that asks why Fujino draws, and for all artists more broadly, why do you create? And besides making a video on adaptations through this film, that is a message that I am interested in talking about because of adaptation. Adaptation is a tool, but unless you understand the choices of why artists use it, readers and audiences can often be very emotional and not understand why some changes have been made. It's all very reactionary. I know for Berserk fans, if there would ever be another anime adaptation again, they would want the inclusion of a character like Wild. And of course, to exclude him must mean that audiences are too precious. They're all snowflakes. They won't be able to handle Wild, so of course he gets axed. which is a dumb excuse. Go watch any Lars von Trier film and you'll know for a fact that shocking pieces of film have always been around long before Berserk. In reality, if someone like Wilde gets cut, it's because the story still works if he's in it or not. People would call it an imperfect adaptation, but that's not really a real thing. There is no perfect scene, there is no perfect main character or perfect panel composition, because to adapt something is a creative choice. Like where to center your characters, what voices will they have, what colors you should use. Adaptation of any medium, especially manga, is forgotten in terms of what restrictions are made of them. For every look back, with creative freedom and source material dense with nuance and options on how to visually represent them, there's your Berserk 2016 and 2017. Sure, sometimes adaptations rise and fall by constraints with budget, incompetence, poor writing, creative differences, and more issues. But every creative production, animated or not, adaptation or not, are liable to these problems. I think it's important to remember that when you watch something like Blue Lock Season 2 or Sakamoto Days and you feel underwhelmed by the animation quality or the story that's being told, even if any of those problems don't arise, these are still stories adapted from another visual medium and can suffer from these principles of trying to recreate them on screen because they weren't made for that intention originally. They won't be the same as the manga because it isn't one, and if it tries too hard to be like one, it will not play to its own strengths. I really don't like it when people say they should have just adapted the thing I like one-to-one, not change anything. Just make the pictures move, it's not hard. I hate that because there is no creative change in that. There's no creative decisions in that. There's nothing that can be added or subtracted to emphasize and make something new. Adaptation is just another skill check at the door, and I think we should adapt amazing stories so they can reach more people. I think the better question is how we do it and why. Besides some easy cash for a studio, telling a story through adaptation is another way for us to be exposed to stories we never imagined we could enjoy from mediums we don't expose ourselves to. I would not have read Dune if it weren't for the first film. I never considered reading manga until I watched Alita Battle Angel. It was a movie that I didn't really like, but felt like it had some potential for a really great story. So I read the manga and realized how good the manga was. That started my manga reading journey that continues today, a medium I never thought I would get into. And I think that's why my video here exists. I found myself more and more excited to learn what films were based on what and what pieces of art inspired entire stories to be created. What films Fujimoto watched to be inspired and create panels that resemble them. Legendary game designer Hideo Kojima was inspired by a short story written by Kobo Abe. It was called Rope. And if you've played Death Stranding, you can just see by the title how that may take some effect. The Shining film is a famously hated film of original author Stephen King, but it is one of the most eerie, important, and influential horror films of all time. Some of Hayao Miyazaki's greatest films are adapted from novels and his own manga. Vagabond is a manga about Miyamoto Musashi, but also loosely adapts the events of the novel Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa. Disney took many famous fairy tales and plays and adapted them and created some of the most iconic animated films of all time. The studio continued to do that over the years. And now they're doing it again, but on their own stuff. Look Back is not only a story of artists who wish to make art for themselves and the people they hold dear. The film's adaptation emphasizes not just the visuals, but that sentiment as well. Adapting a piece of work that they themselves, or any creative person for that matter, can feel represented in. To struggle and adapt something or create something completely new from it, and for who? It's a scary but fun process of making something out of nothing. I found when seeing the film for the first time, really asking myself who I make these videos for. And why I make them on the things I currently love. Sure, maybe they aren't high art, but they carry some aspect of myself that I reveal to whoever watches and is nice enough to listen. But I never stopped to think who they were for, and as I struggled to decide what video is next or what will be an entertaining video for others or especially exciting for me, I don't really have an answer yet besides enjoyment. It just felt good to speak so aloud with my thoughts, as I can't draw or sing like so many artists I admire. Talking about the art I like seems to be my vice on this platform and in this medium, which is a YouTube video about the one animated movie that made you cry. I am taking Look Back and adapting it to this own kind of weird medium itself. And for who? I don't know. There is no other person I make these for besides me, at least right now. But sometimes, whenever I upload, whether it's someone close to me or you watching this now tells me however you can what you watched surprised you or entertained you in some way, shape or form, that feeling it's indescribable to me. But I do have something to replace those words now. Two versions of it actually. They have informed me more of what this feeling means. And now what I see when I look at this panel and really get. I think Look Back is my favorite over Goodbye Eri. Art adapts art, even if it's not direct and is somewhat influenced by it. If we never adapt stories, we never find or make anything new, and sure, maybe they can be better than JPEG moves, or maybe they could be more faithful, maybe they shouldn't be as faithful. But seeing more people experience the story you love, whether it is exactly the same or not, is worth doing, even if the essence of it gets lost, or something completely new and amazing comes from it. And the folks over at Studio Durian did it on a manga I believe should be read, and adapted however we choose. And we should do it even if we don't know for who or why we do it yet. Thank you so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. Below in the description is a Discord you can join, but also a Patreon where you can support videos like these for a single Australian dollar. That being said, I want to take this time to say a massive thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you so much to Lenoriel, Andrew Goss, Robin, Big Nerd, Mr. Lamb, MF Soups, William McGuire, Corey, Jay the Rebel, Shingoku Satsu, Deus Vault, Skippy, JK Sensei, Zeke JT, and Big Muscle Flex. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe so it lets YouTube know you like my videos, or by watching another one of these videos here. Thank you again, but that's all from me. My name is Mugen. As always, have a good one.